Good afternoon from San Diego, California, 2018 USA Ultimate Club Championships. Emmy Fitzgerald with Adam Goff, where the San Francisco Polar Bears are taking on Fort Collins Shame. The 2018 USA Ultimate National Championships are presented by VC Ultimate, providing Ultimate's best custom team uniforms and apparel since 1998. Visit VC on the web at vcultimate.com.
I can hear you.
So an exciting game of pool play underway, where so far Shame is 1-0 in their pool. They beat the first team that they played.
Beat Exist from New York. Exist, a debutante here, just didn't have enough firepower to stay with Shame. Shame, a strong team with a lot of people with some really solid nationals experience, able to handle them in that game pretty easily.
Whereas Polar Bears from San Francisco lost their first round to perennial power Dragon Thrust.
Yeah, Dragon's looking very strong, so I don't think Polar Bears has to have any embarrassment about losing that one. They still should feel very strong in this game. This game's going to be interesting. Contrasting styles to some degree. You'll see Shame known for going big, playing a little loose and free with how they play. Polar Bears, while they've had a huge amount of roster turnover since they were victors many years ago. I'm not sure which year, but still a controlled game quite often. A lot of talent across the board with some younger players. Should be a very interesting game.
So Polar Bears are in white. Shame is in the red jerseys. It'll be a game to 15. And Shame was one that had kind of an interesting regionals journey where they did not earn a strength bid for the South Central Regional. Love Tractor out of Denver was the higher ranked, and then they upset Love Tractor in the regionals final.
Yeah, Shame played one of the early season tournaments without a number of their top level players, so that's really due to attendance as much as talent.
So the first pull will go out of bounds. Polar Bears will start on offense. Nicholas Alexander will check it in at the brick mark. Yeah, so a lot of isolation into that force space for Polar Bears. Kind of finding that quick movement, looking for the huck, and it just dropped too soon.
Yeah, it almost looked like he tried to bank that off of the wind to slide it over. Just didn't stay up for him.
So Shane will go on offense, not wasting any time.
Going big right away.
And have a big receiver in Joe Anderson, more commonly known as Joe Smash, but too tall even for Joe Smash.
Yeah, I'm not sure Joe knew that disc was coming right away, which, since it's Shame, it was probably coming.
Whatever you think probably won't happen will, unless it's something super athletic.
A little disagreement here about an up-down call. Called down by the observer. Shame immediately goes to the observer, giving them their first red zone possession.
So Nick Lance will pick up, very experienced player in the ultimate scene, and he gets that to Anderson. First goal of the game goes to Shame. So that huck that Anderson didn't see what's coming ended up being very beneficial for Shame.
It's a good punt for Shame, put him in the end zone. I think what you saw right away is two teams that are trying to play a wind that's a little bit different than earlier in the day. The throw from right to left, Polar Bears playing that wind not quite keeping it up as much as they would hope. And whereas the throw from Shame going the other way, still edged to the same side of the disc, just picked it up, carried it a little bit over Smash. With a little less wind like in the early rounds, those throws might look a little different.
Right, and when we started the day at the 9 o'clock hour, it's currently 1:33 Pacific time, there was about 3 mile an hour wind, and that has since increased to around 12 or so. Still not a lot for elite throwers, but requires adjustment nonetheless.
Yeah, it's just about paying attention at this point. You're not going to lose your throws if you're careful, but if you're not quite paying attention, then that's when they're going to get away from you.
So Shame will pull. They started the game off with the break. Polar Bears looking to get their first point on the board. So much hang time really allowed Shame to get there, but Polar Bears find that opening. Alexander, the disc, pops that up to Tulfa. And caught out of bounds just as Polar Bears looked like they were starting to get some rhythm. It was too far wide. And another goal, the second for Anderson. That's a second break, too, for Shame.
Opening up with 2 breaks of the game is really kind of a big punch in the mouth for a team right off. This one, you know, both errors unforced. Long throw, short throw out of bounds. The kind of things that you got to get back under control quickly here if you're Polar Bears. So this game could get away fast.
So Polar Bears, the 11 seed coming in, they come from more specifically Berkeley, California, but in that San Francisco Bay Area. They won Select Flight Invite and actually lost to Blackbird and Mischief at sectionals, and then lost to Mischief at regionals, but still qualified. But I mean, that's such a strong section, right?
The section features all the teams that you're going to see at regionals. One of the things that's interesting and very much fun to me about the NorCal mixed sectionals is those national qualifying teams. They play that regional tournament. They use that as one of their tune-up tournaments. They enjoy going and facing the other teams, and it's always interesting to see how the results there change to regionals. NorCal, the Southwest regionals was very interesting, with some interesting early losses made up for. So Polar Bears could come out strong.
So Polar Bears back on offense. Some swings in the handler set. They're resetting the stack on this near sideline for the first couple of throws. Now finding space in the middle, puts up a lot of yardage gains. That's good. Thompson sees 2 receivers in the end zone, and that one goes to Amanda Moreau, the first Polar Bears point of the game.
Yeah. After a little bit of kind of squirreliness and cutting each other off upfield, we see the first touch for Anchi So in the game. Long-time Polar Bear player, very effective cutter and mover. After she got that disc, her turn and shot, very little time between catch and throw to get that thing up, and I think that was key to getting that in a position where the defender had decent position.
And the body control that's really necessary for something like that is just really a testament to her veteran status and ability.
First real look at the Polar Bears D-line here. We'll have to see how they try and minimize the long game of Shame, to see if they focus on that.
So 2-1 for Shame. And I guess this is really the first time their O-line's on, too. A lot of hang time on the pole. Polar Bears playing the lanes. Hansen over to Stenlick, and there's the huck, and diving with the sliding catch is Zach Fleming. That continues on. Aubrey Dietrich gets the goal.
Zach Fleming to the end zone for Aubrey Dietrich in the Shane score.
And Shane really known for their deep looks. Don't waste time.
They are. I do like I like the patience they showed before they got that out. When you saw the nice break in the middle of the field when they first got the backhand through to set that up, it forced the defender to overplay, opens up that deep look without a mark on it. So it was good work by the handling core to kind of set that up and then put the upfielders in a position to make that play.
So be sure to join the conversation, hashtag USAU Nats, and tweet or post about who you're rooting for. I guess Instagram story too, always a good place for hashtags. And then you can also follow USA Ultimate on their various social channels, joining that conversation. Facebook at USA Ultimate, Twitter at USA Ultimate. Guess what it is on Instagram? It's at USA Ultimate, and Snapchat and YouTube. And we have had thousands of people join in so far. The first round had over 4,000 people joining in, but people are so excited to see Ultimate.
The national championships pulls a lot of eyeballs, which is great. Really true that one of the best competition there is. The depth of this tournament, 1 to 16, is higher than you're going to see anywhere else.
It is certainly unparalleled in the sport. Alexander looking for the dump reset. He'll find it. And Sue. And very low throws from Polar Bears, but not this one. Looking for that tall receiver. Polar Bears convert. That's Jesse Bushbaum.
Really good for Polar Bears to see them have a clean offensive point. Little bit of movement. Didn't hit the initial open cut, but still very calm. Move the disc all the way across the field to get the counter throw for the goal. A clean hold that they really needed to see. They need just to build up confidence in that O-line, to give Shame a little bit more pause on their D-line. I think it's that critical, not just to get that hold, but to get that clean.
And both, because a lot of it is even confidence within your O-line to say, okay, we can match up against this team, and you just really need that moving throughout the game.
Absolutely, especially against a team like Shame, free and easy. Talked to their coach, Ashley Daly Morgan, before the game, talking about some of their plans, and really pretty open. Pretty open the way they approach the game. So they're really looking to get out there, put the disc in some of their big players' hands, and let's see what happens.
Meanwhile, you could see Polar Bears has an offense that they were working to run and well executed in that regard. So that pull lands just outside the end zone. Shame keeping that four-side clear. And really high up throw from Fleming, but that's caught. Reich is good at reading the trash. She'll shoot that to the end zone to Dietrich. Two-handed grab. Shame converts.
I think we said free and loose. Starting to see it. I do think that when you saw, so Ryan Morgan took a good cut deep, picked up 3 covers on his way out there, left open that middle of the field, and I think if that throw hadn't gotten away, then they're really trying to take advantage of the right opportunity there. Get a little lucky with the catch. Got some bodies in there, went and got it, but The key to that to me was when Ryan took the players with him. Weren't as many people in the middle of that field to go D that disc for Polar Bears.
So a lot of heads-up defense, born to rise from Shame as they get that goal and go up 2 in this first half.
As you said, Shame from the South Central region, a region where they had to battle Love Tractor, another local team, Colorado, in the finals. And they showed up in that game and really just outplayed them. Not just, big shots throughout the game that they were hitting. Real sign of the way they were going to play here at Nationals as well.
Nick Lance, so talented. He wasn't able to go. He and his wife welcomed a child over the summer, and so he wasn't able to go to some tournaments, and likely could have affected rankings and things like that, but everybody was there at regionals and managed to qualify today.
It was the Elite Select Challenge, the early tournament, where Shane really went and then didn't have a full roster. There were some weather issues at the tournament, caused some confusion about getting ready, doing the right things to prepare for the games, and resulted them sitting very, very close, but just out.
And you can see a flood play from Polar Bears where everybody moves and the stack moves to another side of the field except for who they ended up throwing to. That's Tolfa. And Polar Bears not hanging on for too long to the disc, even with the tight matchups from Shame. And that backhand's popped up in the air. And on the next attempt, there's Max.
One good floater catch deserves another.
Margo Sturt over to Takayama, and just overhead. It didn't seem like the receiver was maybe expecting to get that.
Now, sometimes when you throw that disc into a crowd, you pay for it. Even though that thing got through, it's probably catchable. It's really hard for the receiver to see it, to play it, and to make the right choices about what's going to happen.
And first throw is a huck. It's still live, and thought Lance might get it on the way down, but that's Polar Bear's disc.
Alexander back to pick up.
The Sturt underneath. Takayama. And right through. So there was a poach from Peter Rains, but it seems like between Hugh Carey and, I'm trying to see the Polar Bears player, there was some contact.
Yeah, it looks like we have a bump on the head there, which is not, you never want to see that. You have to take some time to check. It looked to me like, that's, not sure, I think that was Alexander who was clearing. As he was clearing to a spot on the sidelines, just left his defender, didn't get a look, no one talking to the thrower. You hope that the thrower sees it, but it's difficult in high pressure game. You want to have some communication to tell the thrower that that poacher has just sat in the lane. Really easy D once that choice was made.
So both players involved in the contact and that collision will take an injury sub.
Max steps off for Polar Bears. Greg Marley up on. Peter Rains with that takeaway for Shame.
So Rains will hold on to it for Shame. As the injury subs are checked into play. He's looking for Lance. And just overthrown. Disc goes back to Polar Bears.
A few extra turnovers at this point. It's getting a little bit messy.
and bounced off the hands. Got some zip on that flick. So Shane will get it back.
I'm sure Marley will say that he should have had that one.
Altabelli looks for Garcia. Lands with the disc as Shane approaches her red zone, but intercepted by Sturt.
Great D by Sturt coming across, read it right away.
And Polar Bears throwing up the huck. 2 defenders underneath, but running straight to it. Does not have any receivers, but looks, finds that opening, and Polar Bears converts. That's Cheryl Sue. So, Polar Bears picking up. Sweeney over to Munson. And right through the middle. And there's the huck, but tipped out of the way. It's still active. Molly Munson keeps that alive. And Polar Bears looking for the break as it hangs up. That one-handed grab is good. We're all tied up at 4s.
Good break. Good break for Polar Bears. It's interesting to see Polar Bears making things a little bit interesting. To see the huck that should have been D'd, the high flip in the wind. It's interesting to see some of the more creative throws and creative choices that they're either getting away with or doing by choice.
It's interesting with this wind, too. We've seen a couple trash pickups from the deep space, which you don't see often from this level of wind, which isn't that much.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the wind's picking up. We're not looking at some of the winds we've seen in past championships down in Sarasota yet, and it's not. I don't believe it's predicted to get to that. But there is enough wind that if you get that disc out in the wrong spot right now, it's going to float. It's going to bounce around a little bit, and what we're seeing, I think, on some of these throws is just not quite as careful. It'll be interesting now to see Shame if they can kind of recover that offense. What it looks like to me is they're not quite generating that clean space that they want on those hucks. Usually very good at generating that open space, driving into that deep space from a good angle, and it looks like they're trying to hit a few harder ones right now. The Polar Bears offense, I like some of the adjustments they've made early on in the game. They were coming out of a standard hoe stack, and they were struggling to get those first couple cuts open. After they came out once in a side stack, once in a flood play, and forced the defense to deal with a few different looks, they've kind of regenerated some of that confidence, and they're showing a little bit of different look to make sure that they can open up their initiating cutters. And I like that adjustment, and I think it's showing in the score, in the fact that they put themselves right back in this game.
So a timeout called. You could see on screen Shame is doing a lot of coaching in the huddle, kind of trying to make those adjustments appropriately. As you expect every game to be pretty close once you get to nationals, too.
Yeah, I think it's as I said, it's an interesting matchup in terms of the two different styles that you would expect out of the way that they're playing. And we're seeing that play out. And, I think, Polar Bears would like to see their offense be a couple fewer turnovers. They'd like to be a little bit cleaner in terms of how they're moving. Shame? They'd like to see it. I'm not sure how important it is to them. They'll take those shots and get them.
So, immediate centering, the pull from Shame. Reich over to Fleming. Far side, Herrera to Lance. And puts that up. The disc is hanging and just grabbed out of the air, a little short on the throw. Polar Bears answering with a huck right away. And by a fingertip is caught. And the next one, a rolling catch for Polar Bears to take the lead.
Again, I feel like that long throw from Shame is not the spacing, not the open target that they want to see. That's the one that has to cross into this wind, makes it a little bit harder, but it was to a player that's out there already, not a mover, not someone who's trying to take advantage of a cut into space. So even if they're trying to play loose and free, I think they'd rather see that cutter in and someone else find that space from underneath.
Molly Munson, though, with that grab, just fingertips. That's a Born to Rise play for sure.
Spectacular grab, as that disc was carrying, pushing farther and farther. Very impressive to not just get that, but to hold on, keep that disc up in the air, to make sure it looks good on the stream.
She has friends and family watching. They will certainly be super pumped about that catch.
That's how you set yourself up to show up in top plays.
So Shame, a lot of spacing, finds Anderson.
There's a call upfield, an injury upfield, so this play is over. Ryan Morgan cutting across got caught by the defender, I think right on his hand as he came back into the field. I think he got that one. I think once they got really crowded in there, forced him to make a very tricky, difficult throw.
So Polar Bears with a chance to go up 2 if they can score here. Working it up the near sideline. Schlag, the disc. And just out of reach for Huang. And looking for Joe Smash in the end zone, and he dives for it, bounces off of the hands.
You are not going to see that miss out of Smash very often. That disc, a little hot, diving to the ground, so he has to make a play. Certainly one that he's going to want back.
So Polar Bears back on offense, turning into another long point. Thrower poached.
Yeah, a little confusion. 2 defenders on a deep cutter.
So Madden with the disc, shoots up line to Schlag. And floating to space. Polar Bears, it's floating up in the air and going far. That one's intercepted. Gets it to Lance, but bounces off just a little too high.
Just going back over the Polar Bears after
Getting a few throws that are just a little quick, getting away. One floating the wind, one just a little too high.
So a lot of back and forth as Hom picks up and takes a timeout.
That's their first time out.
I think a smart play at this point. I think you're seeing a few little kind of mental, physical errors on the play. Time to put this in. Getting that 6-4 lead, very important. I think you also saw as he picked up the disc and looked up, nobody's moving.
It's like, you know, if they're tired, maybe it's time for a timeout.
Long point. Let's settle in here. Get this thing controlled. It's interesting to still see the way in which Shame is trying to get their movement, setting it up, still trying to set up that little setup to get that long throw, but just honestly just missing on a couple things, making it a little bit harder on themselves. This one, 6 inches too high. The throw to Smash, catchable, just a little bit harder than it needs to be. And I don't, with the quality of throwers on this team, the high, people have been throwing at a high level for many, many years. I don't think it's something you would expect out of some of those throws. Little wind, little nationals, shouldn't matter. I think they're going to expect a little bit more out of themselves on those throws.
So coming out of the timeout, looks like Hom will have the disc, and we see the 2 handlers for Polar Bears back and away from the disc pretty far.
It's all the different ways in which they can create space, especially up near. We see an immediate poach into that lane to see if they'll swing right away.
And just still inbounds, Huang with the disc. Set to Madden. Up to Chen.
We have a call.
And there's a call, and the disc is intercepted, but looks like a foul's called.
Foul was called.
Then Huang looks in a little bit of disbelief, but Emily Hansen was on the ground.
There's a little bump in contact as Huang started her cut upfield. I'm sure that Hansen wasn't behind her, so it'll be interesting to see how they resolve this.
It's also interesting because then the next couple throws, there was a change of possession.
Yeah, that throw didn't happen. Since this happened before that throw to her, that throw never happened.
Oh, so the observer does uphold the foul call. So the disc will go back to Chen. Huang gets it. Over to Cogswell, and just bounces off.
Very kind of fluttery disc thrown at her. Another missed break chance.
And Shame quickly gaining yards. High release flick to smash. He gets this one. That's a score for Shame. They go up by 2.
That's a Shame score. We're all tied up at 5.
Creative throw again. Get that into Joe Anderson in the end zone. I think what we saw there, that was Bob Madden setting up on the D again, who's gotten 2 or 3 good ones, and that throw just carried a little too far for him to get another nice D. Smash able to go up strong and take that disc down. Another interesting point if you go back to the end of that timeout. Right out of that timeout, almost immediately because of the poach, Polar Bears ended up going backwards about 25 yards. And while they got it back, they were no longer kind of set well. They tried to come out of that. And it's interesting to see the comfort with which they went backwards, but that it may have cost them a chance at that point.
So now we're tied at 5s in this first half of play. And talk about that experience that often comes from different clinics that can come from the Girls Ultimate movement. They're held all across the country. And Bay Area and Denver, Fort Collins area, certainly great youth programs. That's a huck, still floating, going up high.
We're going to see a foul call here. Oh.
We had a foul call down there in the end zone.
So the disc will stay with Polar Bears, uncontested.
A blind jump at a D there.
And that continuation is good. Polar Bears go back up by 1.
Ryan Takayama and Margo Sturt in the end zone for the Polar Bears score.
Interesting long throw and an interesting bid because it looked like that disc was hanging enough that you could actually get a turn and get a jump at it. That's a tough read, easier read from up here than it is from down there, certainly. Disc coming probably right out of the sun at him, having to make a blind play, but I'm sure he's going to think of that as unfortunate with a disc that could have easily been D'd.
So Sturt with the score.
Thing to note here with the Shame offense, we're still not seeing Ryan Morgan come back after he got his hand caught. He's a player that doesn't get as much airtime on this team when people talk about Nick Lance and some of the other names, but he really is an important glue factor for them on that offense. So if he's not able to return, that could be very difficult. At this point, he's walking away from the field, heading toward the medical tent to get that looked at. We'll have to see how they fill in that mover, cutter, and strong player. That Ryan usually plays that role very well for Shane.
We wish him all the best, and hopefully it's not serious, as Shane will receive the pull. Herrera receives to Krutzinger, and through pressure, Marilyn Reich gets it. And kind of a little bit of a late bid, but able to complete.
Got themselves into their power position in the deep cut, covered up with a poacher.
So whenever Shame is dumping, they're sure to swing right away, hoping to open up shots like this right outside the end zone. Zach Fleming once again over to Nick Schnutzka, and that's a goal for Shame.
Yeah, I like the persistence Zach had with his cutting there. On an early cut that he took in the middle of the field, we had one of the women from Polar Bears poach off to help with that deep defense. I like the idea that they're ignoring the gender. Go help, do the right thing to stop that. But he was able to continue to cycle. He continued to put that effort in, another 25 yards in, 25 yards out, and finally they're able to hit it in a position where that throw didn't have to be perfect. That throw could be a little short, didn't have to float. He has enough steps that it's wide open for him.
So that was the first, our past 2 points were the first pair of clean points with no turnovers since the score was 4-2.
Definitely something I think both teams are going to feel a little bit better about.
They know what they're capable of. But you just hope that that comes out at the pinnacle of your season. So tied at 6s, nobody's making it easy for anyone.
Yeah, definitely a grinder at this point in this one. Teams are having to grind through these. We've seen 3 kind of slot pickups, other things that teams are having to do to get it done.
So Polar Bears working on offense underneath mostly, which are the cuts that are more towards the disc than away. And really tight coverage from Shame. Haven't quite seen that many helps. Help D.
Polar Bears creating good space to force one-on-one coverage. Shame holding up to it so far.
Tolfa with the disc and overthrows. Kind of goes behind a couple players. Lance to Anderson. For to Rains. And nice sliding grab. Keep that one alive. But is that a hand block?
I believe that just came out, Garcia's hand. I think that was after a great grab. I think that was just an unfortunate one where it just slipped out.
So a pick called on the field. Polar Bears trying to show a lot of patience, it seems like.
Got their stack is stretched a little bit deeper, forcing those unders.
Dockin with the disc. It's over to Applegate. Continues to that far sideline. And sliding catch. Lance avoids that contact.
Great choice by Lance there.
And now Polar Bears knocking on the door to go up by 1. Just right over the top. That's a score for Polar Bears.
That's about, let's turn the numbers. I think that's about the 7th missed break chance. And I think we're seeing a lot of missed break chances by both teams. And those are the kind of opportunities that you rue as the other team starts to tighten up toward the end of the game, settle into the game a little bit. Need to make sure that they get those, when they get the disc, that they can convert at a little bit higher rate.
So half is at 8, but Shame will have the disc to start on offense coming up. And this is just one of so many games that are being streamed. I dare say the next game in the mixed division that will be live streamed is probably the most anticipated, certainly in the mixed division, and that is Seattle Mixtape versus DC Space Heater, which we'll have on our USA Ultimate live stream.
Space Peter, one of those games that everyone's talked about a lot this year. A lot of brand new team with a lot of big players coming in. And we have a pull that.
Wow, so that pull went out of bounds very early and was probably going to give Shame very good field position. It was saved by an offsides call.
That was a savior for them. I'm not sure those of you watching may have even seen that. It went out of bounds so quickly.
It did.
And stayed out. That is.
It went out of bounds certainly before it passed the announcer's booth, which is at right around midfield. But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Certainly Shame would love to have been able to take that pull as it was.
So another shot.
And a better pull.
You even saw Ian Sweeney was like, oh my gosh. More like the pull that he wants. And there's the huck right off the bat. First throw, one step out of the end zone. Immediate reset. Still not in. And that next dump, no good.
No good. Had Tina Dowell pull back on a cut there as she was covered.
And
big one.
Floating huck. It's kind of anybody's ball. And another second attempt grab from Polar Bears. Oh, but a stall is called back at the throw.
There's a little long count. It'll be interesting to see how they play this. They have the option of going to the observer, which could make any decision. So they're not, looks like they're not going to the observer on this call. They're playing it as a contested stall to bring the disc back.
Disc back to Sweeney, coming in
So,
on 8, contested stall.
Sweeney will check it back in.
Stall will come in 8 here. Interesting to see if we see a similar throw.
And he's looking for the reset. That's popping up.
Oh.
And I almost thought that Polar Bears was going to get that trash too.
I'm just going to have to start calling bank on these throws.
So Shane with the disc, looking to tie it up at 7s. A lot of zip on that flick. Another zippy flick. And that's a goal. 7 apiece.
I like the, very interesting to see them just contest that stall. if the marker is confident there, you'll often see that person take that to the observer, which could result in anything. Now, with this wind, sometimes it's hard for the observers to hear, so you're not sure. But the observer did not signal that it was his ruling for it. So it was played foul contest. Turns out to be a smart play from Shame. Gets through, gets a pop-up throw out of that tight position.
So we're all tied up at 7s. So be sure to watch all of the live stream games that are happening all weekend long. Games are going to be streamed each round today, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You can watch the games on USAU's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And the USAU Ultimate streams are produced by Fulcrum Media. You can catch other live stream games on UltiWorld's YouTube. And then some semifinals and the finals will be on ESPN, while there will be a men's and mixed semifinal on the USAU live stream. So much Ultimate.
Lots of Ultimate for people to watch this weekend. Some very good games already so far. You're seeing some very tight games. A few upsets so far, and I think as we get on this day, you're going to see a few more of those.
Polar Bears looking hard to get that first throw, but they break open, shoot for the end zone. Unguarded is Takayama, and some blown coverage results in a score for the Polar Bears. They'll take half, 8-7.
Yeah, looked like a poach and a look at a different lane from Nick Lance there. Left a cutter open by quite a few yards, making that an easy hold to take us to half.
Take 10, everybody.
So with that catch, that brings it to halftime. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll have an interview and talk a little bit about the second half. The 2018 USA Ultimate National Championships are presented by VC Ultimate, providing Ultimate's best custom team uniforms and apparel since 1998. Visit VC on the web at vcultimate.com. And here at the half, we have from the Polar Bears, Chris Cogswell. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first half, you guys go down 2 breaks. But now we're back on serve. You took half 8-7. What were some adjustments you guys made to come back?
Yeah, we came out a little slow, made some execution errors, but we really adjusted with the wind a little bit, trusted our throws, and really kind of just played to our strength.
Who do you think has been doing really well on the team that you want to shout out a little bit?
I think overall our ladies are doing really well. I know Fran had a couple deep Ds, Cookie. Molly Munson had a great layout catch over here in the end zone or close to the end zone. So our ladies are really holding it down. I think our guys got to step it up a little bit.
Isn't that the case? So going into the second half, what are you guys hoping to really execute and show that you're able to do?
So I think we want to really play to our strength, continue playing to our strengths a little bit more. We know this team likes to huck it a lot, play the deep ball. We're familiar with some of their players, so just kind of getting under the disc, contesting, just making a play.
All right, well, good luck in the second half.
Thank you.
It's Chris Cogswell with Polar Bears. They lead Shame 8-7. We'll be right back. Welcome back to San Diego, where we are about to start the second half. Emmy Fitzgerald with Adam Goff. San Francisco Polar Bears up on Fort Collins Shame, 8-7.
After what was really a messy first half, even with their loose, free approach to the game, I'm sure Coach Dalen Morgan wants to see Shame clean up their offense, get their shots to open players, and I think we heard at halftime, the Bears wants to go out and play a little bit more of their game. They want to control the disc. They want to get their cutters in motion, move it, and play a little bit cleaner. This half could really come down to who actually can make those adjustments, possess the ball. Otherwise, might be due for a little bit of a miss.
So there's the pull to start the second half. Shame on offense. Fiacco to Herrera. And you have some handler swings back and forth, coupled with some deep shots.
Good to see Ryan Morgan back on the field. He took a jam to that left thumb, non-throwing hand, says he's fine.
You can see some tape on that hand. A lot of spacing between the handlers and the cutters, and the bobble kind of getting used to that taped up hand.
Certainly could have been a factor on that disc coming in.
So the muscle memory becomes such second nature. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but Shame maintaining possession. Pick called.
Pick call. Six.
And out of reach, but an injury is called.
I think we're going to see that disc come back based on the injury call.
Looks like we have an injury call.
So it looks like the disc will come back.
See if
The count was very high.
it was. We'll see if these two New York transplants working with the disc and the dump do a cleaner job of this.
And a second shot, but the same outcome with the dump. Shot to the end zone. First point of the second half, and it stays in bounds. That's a goal for Polar Bears. Talk about closing speed for Marliov.
Marliov is a strong player. He's been a strong player for years out in the Bay Area. Really able to accelerate. People sometimes forget where his strengths are because he's got them all over the map. For Shame, a little bit unfortunate to get themselves trapped into a situation and then hold on to that disc in that situation. Look at a couple cuts that just weren't quite open enough and then miss that dump swing.
So now Polar Bears have gone up by 2. Believe their largest lead of the game so far.
Certainly as they went down early, had to claw back in to start the game. Let's see if Shane can play a little bit cleaner. Said that. Polar Bears now scored clean right away. Clean right after that turn, so for no turn break.
So Chris Cogswell, who was in our booth at halftime, he'll pull for Polar Bears. Fleming catches it over to Russell. And too high. Another break shot for the Polar Bears right outside their end zone. Munson, and that next pass is good. That's another break. Joe Thompson got the score.
Two quick breaks right out of half.
That's San Francisco 10, Fort Collins 7.
Then we saw that Shame offense focusing on a cut for a little bit of time. Stayed with Lance, and then when it took that throw into that wind, it was probably already had brought the mark over, made that a little bit harder throw to get up.
So Polar Bears up by 3. Here in this second half of play, pool play that we're starting with. This is Pool B, so the other teams, Dragon Thrust, the 2 seed, Exist, the 14 seed, Polar Bears, the 11 seed, Shame, the 7.
It's an interesting pool with a mix of newcomers and established teams that have been here a few times.
Aaron Tom on the pull for Polar Bears.
Dragon playing Exist on another field. That game looks like it's 8-5 at halftime.
It's pretty close.
Dragon in the lead.
Lance with the disc. Had a little bit of a double cut, so he's resetting. And Shame really looking to get into that power position, coupling with a deep shot. They get it past midfield. Dietrich with the disc, and play stopped.
It's like a little bit of a trip, sent the defender to the grounds. Disc goes back on the foul call.
So back in play, Shame looking to take it within 2. Lance up the sideline, or up the, yeah, it was up the sideline, but the disc is not complete.
An unforced turnover, a disc with a little heat gives Polar Bears a chance to open strong 3 breaks. Seemed like Shane put in a lot of work and just not quite patient enough at the end zone there.
So Polar Bears back on offense, layout, bid, but Polar Bears keeps possession. Sees an unguarded receiver, and that's another Polar Bear score. Aaron Hom was able to break free.
A little confusion on a potential switch up in front, not picking up Hong as he's going to the end zone. I think it's what you're seeing, unfortunately, is you're seeing Shame heads down a little bit after working really hard to give up those 3 breaks.
And Hom, though, and the rest of the Polar Bears kind of just grinding after a long point to convert it for them.
As we heard at halftime, they talked about they started throwing some more confidence in their throws, cutting through this wind and not worrying about it. And you could see that in that point as soon as they got it. Very kind of quick movement, quick, simple throws right up that line to open cutters.
And you could see in the last possession, Nick Lance was getting the disc probably every 3 or so, looking for that shot downfield, and Shame just having a little bit of trouble getting those deep cuts.
Looked like we saw a good adjustment where Polar Bears was really kind of staying a little bit closer, not giving up the first step on that deep cut. So they were staying with it right out of the cut. So it never quite looked open for anybody. Shame will shoot that even if they have half a step. They'll shoot it early, so if you stay with it right away, it's going to make a big difference.
So Shame on offense sends Anderson deep right away. Instead, the handlers are working it in the backfield. And another miscue. He kind of picked up the disc when it was already down, but that advanced favorable field position. So goal line opportunity for Polar Bears. They go on another roll. They're now up 12-7.
They're not, in the first half, Shame on defense was making Polar Bears work for every one of their movements, every yard that they're getting, and now it looks like Polar Bears is getting that a little bit quicker movement, making it that much harder to slow them down. That's helping them be really clean, play this second half.
A timeout's called. Each team gets 2 timeouts per half. And this is the 50th year of the great sport of Ultimate. 50 years and still flying.
Some great events out here associated with the club championships this year, where you're seeing a lot of the greats. I talked to Jim Paranella, Paul Greff. Some of the names started 80s and 90s who are wandering around, not just pulling in the event here, reconnecting with people as part of this kind of great community that Ultimate forms. It's really great to see that people make the trip out here to see some of the events, see out in beautiful San Diego for the weekend.
See how amazing this is. Look at this aerial drone shot with all of the mountains and the trees. It's a good combination of palm trees and I don't know what to call the other non-palm trees.
Trees is fine.
Yes, they're trees.
We'll pull on my botany background and I will call them trees.
And it's a celebration of the great sport and spirit of the game, which is a major tenet that is upheld through players, coaches, spectators. In fact, even at halftime, the spirit captains from either team were talking with each other to just do a check-in on spirit. Hey, how was our spirit? Do you have any feedback? What can we do better? That mutual respect is something that will just carry through this sport regardless of what the future holds.
One of the great things about Ultimate is that spirit, not just being part of the community, respecting the players you're with, but really holding on to that, happens at every level. To see it here at Nationals, really exhibited by all the teams, is fantastic.
So Shame looking to get some points on the board on offense. Lance with the huck. And tracking it down all the way in for the goal is Nick Snutska.
Exactly what Shame needed. Get themselves space, one-on-one, out deep with a couple steps. Put it in the hands of their shooter, Nick Lance. Clean hold without having to grind it. Got to feel good for Shame to get that. Put their D back out there and let's try and take it away from Polar Bears again. They started with 2 breaks. They certainly have the ability in them.
And that is very much more the brand of Shame Ultimate that we've come to expect from them. They're so good at finding that deep separation when their connections are on.
Yeah, it's the first time they've really managed to get a cutter loose deep in 4 points, and you see the results of it. That's where Polar Bears is able to get those breaks when Shame had to grind. They have the skills, they have the people who can grind, it's just not their character.
So Polar Bears still carving themselves a 4-point lead. It's a game to 15. A lot of hang time for the pull. Alexander over to Sue, to Max. Alexander keeping that alive. Now working it to the far sideline and bobbled off the hands. An opportunity for shame. Adam, these are the break opportunities that you were talking about. D-line, though, needing to convert.
Shame gets their first break opportunity at the half, and they really have to take advantage of this.
Count's getting high. Looking to reset to Lance. Laser of a shot to Anderson. Anderson around to Lance, about 3 rolls to get there. Back over to Anderson.
Defense up in that end zone by Polar Bears. Very strong right now to make these shots difficult.
And it's kind of back and forth between Anderson and Lance. Finally find a different receiver in Reigns. Inside, through the coverage. That's a break for shame.
Really important break into Tina McDowell. Rejoined the team here at Nationals, living out of the country right now. Hasn't been with them earlier. Long-time rare air player. Strong player, gets that catch in the end zone on the invert throw.
Through so much coverage, too. Takes a lot of mental strength as well to reel those in.
Yeah, I don't think a crowd is going to affect Tina trying to get that disc.
So Shane brings the lead within 3. Still need more breaks, though, to tie it back up. But Polar Bear showing they could get several breaks in a row.
I think we saw in the first half that if Shame can make this game a little bit ugly, right? Force Polar Bears to do some hard things. They can get that disc. The key for them is scoring clean when they get it at this point. When you're down a couple in the second half, when you get it, you got to capitalize. For Shame, they've got to feel very good seeing that capitalize on that one right there, that they were able to convert. You know, lots of back and forth, but nothing hard for them. Put that in a tight space right there at the end, but they've got to feel good about that. Coach Daly Morgan probably telling him, give me more of the same.
The pull is inbounds. Cogswell over to Munson, but miscue. So another chance for Shame to get a break. And a layout at the last second keeps the disc alive, the point alive for Polar Bears.
Gave up an opportunity by trying to milk that into the end zone. Instead of going to get it, just kind of stayed back, gave his defender a chance to make the play.
There was a pick on the play, stopping movement. Now Polar Bears working the far sideline. It's out to Cogswell. Nice one-handed catch from Moreau. And Polar Bears almost in, but not. An injury's called.
Leaves Anchi So with the disc just outside the end zone in their red zone offense.
Coming off for Polar Bears, Tolpa on.
So Shame making substitution as well. So with that inside flick, and Polar Bears maintains the hold. They get 13.
Difficult for Shame to give that one up. Had a chance with the disc, trying to make a comeback. Polar Bears after the turn, solid and quick up the field that second time. And that's the offense that was working for them earlier in the half after their Ds. Got right back to it once they got that thing moving, kept it moving.
And really great work from that layout D. I think that was Andrew Oyang, number 22.
As I said, unfortunate because it really looked like a wide swing, meaning you're going across a lot of people, giving defenders a good angle at it. It's really important as a receiver to go attack that disc. Know that a defender might come across, might be able to come in. They don't have to go as far as you do if you keep stretching it wide. Not sure if he was thinking about staying in the end zone and getting that goal, but it certainly looked like it as he was moving with that disc.
So Polar Bears to pull. Lots of hang time. And Huck right away. It stays in bounds. It's hanging and batted out.
Just a difficult to get that disc far enough on that backhand long. This wind coming across a little bit. Wind helps keep it in the field, but takes off a little distance.
The Polar Bears back on offense. Disc on the far sideline. There's hanging, it's hanging, and incomplete.
Polar Bears turnover.
Right away lofted, making it way harder than it needed to be for Shame.
Gave Morgan really no chance to get that. Floating it up, bringing in a couple defenders. That's where you're close enough. Let that disc go.
Short, intercepted. Another chance for Shame.
Polar Bears turnover. Special teams there to make sure with the knee.
And look into the end zone. There's Dietrich. Shame gets the goal.
Great shot on that throw. That's not super tight space, but tight enough. Put a little zip on it to get it past the defender. In for the Shame goal. 13-10. Certainly still a game at this point.
Fort Collins 10.
So what started as kind of a back and forth, Shame is able to get their 10th point of the game, go into double digits. You can see the time on the clock is to hard cap. So soft cap is 20 minutes ahead of that. So we're about 4 minutes away from soft cap. When does time become a factor for Shame to make a comeback?
Given the game is moving pretty quickly, observed games help with that. I think they should be able to, even if they start getting this out, given that really 2 more points from Polar Bears would end the game, I think there's enough time because they're going to need to get 3 points before that hard cap comes on. There's plenty of time for them to do that. We'd have to see a true Summer League point breakout before
We've been there.
Before hard cap would be a factor.
I wish Texas Summer League was this weather. Oh my goodness. Even at night, it's still hotter than this.
I don't want any league to be played in this weather.
Polar Bears looking to get their 14th point. They're within 2 of winning. Margot Sturt, the disc to Cheryl Sue. Now Takayama sees Naruo with space and one-handed grab. Just plucks that out of the air.
That disc turning away from him forces him to make a good play. Like the Polar Bears using the insides on that disc, create space for people coming off the sidelines, inside. Set that up so that when you get one good shot, you have a nice look.
Born to rise through that coverage. Torn shorts and everything. I don't think he tore them on that catch, but you can see maybe why.
No, time to go off to the sideline, get the support staff team seamstress to do a little repair. Most teams have given up on bringing that kind of staff with them to these events, so they may have to start staffing it as a general shared service.
Right? You love to see the different support staff that teams bring. You know, a lot of times it's a photographer, videographer. Something you see, especially at the master's level, is a team masseuse.
Absolutely.
But I would dare say a team masseuse would be great here, too, for these teams.
I'm certain that there are a few teams that have that. Try and keep these bodies going.
So Shame needing to score here to keep the game going.
Looks like at this point, it's a call. If you look upfield at this point, you can see that Shane has a few players that are stretched out into that deep space, which makes that deep shot very difficult and limits their offense.
So they come underneath a little bit, but will reset to the handler through coverage. And a chicken wing?
Thumber.
A thumber.
Looks like we're going to see a thumber potentially go back on a pick call. That's a crowd displeasing call. Yep.
Let's take another look at the thumber.
Pretty good whip on that thumber.
So the disc will go back. A leading backhand instead, and that's enough to get the score for Shame.
No doubt, change that score to a little bit more boring throw. When you talk about the chicken wing, I think you're being suckered into the 50th anniversary celebrations. There's a number of players walking around here who that may have been there beforehand.
That's true. They're like, this is a flick. What are you talking about?
That's exactly what that throw is supposed to look like.
You do not see a lot of thumbers, I will say, at national level play. You don't really see a lot of thumbers in game play in general.
That is for sure. It's a pretty rare throw to see that. It is an interesting and useful throw if you think about the angle that a hammer would come down. If you want a throw over the top that settles in going the other way, the thumber does that. And yet, it is still uncommon.
So Shame able to answer back. They're still down by 3. Polar Bears will get the disc on offense. If they score here, that's game over. And one really great use for that style of ultimate short is the sideline drum, I guess you could call it.
A little bit dangerous across the middle.
So
Shane playing a zone here.
really nice one-handed catch. Great give and go. Tolfa kind of goes through what sort of seemed to be the cup, but Shame was crumbling. Advancing near the end zone, and that is the score for Polar Bears. And they'll win over Shame, 15-11.
We talked at halftime about needing to clean up in the second half, and the team that cleaned up better in the second half is the team that wins. The breaks to lead the half, 1 turnover, clean offense by the D-line from Polar Bears. really changed the tone of this game from a game that looked close to one that just got away from Shame.
So this puts the pool into a little bit of a spin in Pool B in the mixed division. Polar Bears, the 11 seed, just beat Shame, the 7 seed. I think Dragon Thrust is likely leading Exist.
Dragon Thrust up on Exist 11-7 at this point. See, and you would certainly favor them. So this game could, at this point, you could see if it plays out as predicted, then it'll just be a flip in the middle.
But Polar Bears showing a lot of grit, ice water in their veins, as they come out to take half and then end with an even stronger lead. They beat Fort Collins Shame 15-11. For Adam Goff, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald. Thanks for watching. Space Heater Mixtape is next.